Hi everybody, today's focus of our lesson is going to be about the fundamental characteristics of Buddhism, so the basics about this religion. So in front of you, you should have your notes and a pen or a pencil to complete as I go through some of these slides. So the first thing is, where did Buddhism begin? Well, all of this red area here in Eastern Asia, this is called the Buddhist heartland. So this is where the majority of Buddhists are found today. The majority of Buddhists, the highest number, would be concentrated here in China, but Buddhism actually started in this itty-bitty country on the Indian subcontinent known as Nepal. The founder of Buddhism was born in Nepal, and his name was Siddhartha Gautama. He was born a little over 2,500 years ago, and he was raised as a Hindu. He was the prince of a small kingdom in Nepal, so his life was pretty privileged, and he didn't realize until he was a young man that there was actually a lot of suffering around him. The story says that he left his kingdom in Nepal, and he was alarmed by all the suffering, the poverty, the illness, what was going on around him, and that led him to wanting to know more about why people suffer. And as a result, he created a religion called Buddhism. Now, knowing that Siddhartha Gautama was raised Hindu, it makes sense that a lot of the things that he adapted to Buddhism have some similarities in Hinduism. So we'll notice some overlapping. One concept in Hinduism and Buddhism is reincarnation. Reincarnation is rebirth. So this is the idea that people are reborn after they die. And the goal in both Hinduism and Buddhism is that you live a better life than the ones you've lived before. And it does not necessarily mean that people return to Earth in the same form. It could be that you're an insect, an animal, a human of a different caste. So the caste system in Hinduism, in Buddhism, not necessarily, but the idea maybe that you're born rich or poor. And the end goal in both Hinduism and Buddhism is the same. In Hinduism, we saw this concept known as moksha, M-O-K-S-H-A. And that was the ultimate goal of being released from reincarnation, this idea that the soul was no longer in any kind of pain. Well, Buddhists believe in the same thing. They call it nirvana. So nirvana, in addition to being a 90s grunge band, is also the same as moksha. Okay, so it's this idea that there's no pain, no suffering, no fear. Everything is almost like a paradise. Okay, so nirvana is the same as moksha, which we talked about on Friday in Hinduism. So the Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama, he got that name because the Buddha means enlightened one. So he was believed to be very wise, and he came up with 4 truths, the 4 noble truths, which everybody who follows his faith should follow. And they are, number 1, life is full of suffering. Number 2, all suffering is caused by desire. Number 3, desire can be overcome. And number 4, the way to overcome it is through the Eightfold Path, which I'll talk about here in a minute. So this idea is that every human being suffers, but we suffer because we want things, we desire things. So maybe that means we want a huge house, or we want a great job, or we want a nice car, okay? So the idea is that when we don't get those things, we suffer, we're upset, we keep wanting more. So the Buddha says that that can all be overcome, and he lists 8 things called the Eightfold Path, which is the way to do so. So the Eightfold Path, this here is the Eightfold Path wheel. If we look, it has 8 spokes, and each of those spokes stands for one of the 8 rights. right knowledge, right intent, right speech, right conduct, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. So the Buddha says that if you do these things, it's like your guidebook here, if you do these things, you put forth the right effort, or right conduct might mean not being violent or um, being respectful, the right speech, not speaking ill of anybody. Okay, if you do all of these things, you'll be a happier person. Buddhism has a lot of numbers here. So we had the Eightfold Path, then we have the 5 precepts come next. So the 5 precepts, things that Buddhists should follow. Number 1 is do not take the life of anything living. This explains why most Buddhists are vegetarians. Number 2, do not take anything not freely given. This would mean do not steal. Number 3, abstain from misconduct and overindulgence. Conduct yourself in an appropriate manner. Abstain means to stay away from. And overindulgence could be like eating too much or partying too much. Okay, so stay away from those things. Number 4, refrain from untrue speech. That would mean not lying, not gossiping. And the last of the precepts is avoiding intoxication. That is losing mindfulness. Okay, so we hear intoxication meaning people who are drinking alcohol. So that could be one of the ways that this is interpreted, but also intoxication might just mean clouding your thoughts with lies or gossip, not having clear focus. So on your notes here, I want you to think about, of these 5 precepts, which would be the hardest for you personally to follow and why? Which one would you struggle with the most? Okay, and then the last thing to talk about briefly here is this gentleman named Tenzin Gyatso. That was his birth name. Who is he? Well, we refer to him as the Dalai Lama. So Lama means like leader. Okay, so not llama with 2 L's, the animal. No, llama in a different context here. Buddhists believe that he is the embodiment of all the compassion of the Buddha. So essentially, he's the 14th Dalai Lama. So the soul of the Buddha has been reincarnated for multiple generations here. And so he's kind of like, I consider him like a role model for Buddhists. He's a spiritual guide or a spiritual leader. And so he stands up for compassion and speaking in support of those 5 precepts and the Eightfold Path and the 4 Noble Truths. So what will happen, he's an old man, he's in his 80s, I believe. What will happen is when he dies, they will find a new Dalai Lama to fill in that role. Okay? That is where this video is going to end. So make sure your notes are completed, and then the next step is going to be an exit slip on Schoology. Okay, have a great day, everybody. Bye-bye. See you later.